Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to the Podman community meeting for October 1st of 2024. Tom, our usual host, isn't here, so I will be filling in today. And let us go ahead and get started. The first topic we have is a demonstration of DOSU by Devin Stein. Devin, you want to go ahead and give that?
Yeah, happy to. Thanks, Matt. Hey, everyone. I guess I'm Devin, the founder of DOSU, but also an open source maintainer, which is how I ended up, I guess, working on DOSU. Let me share my screen. So I don't know how much context everyone has on DOSU, but I will quickly share like a little bit and then just dive into a demo slash how it can be used and hopefully how it can also be helpful to the Podman community. So this is DOSU. I don't know if you've seen it before. It's on, we're installed on over, I guess, 23,000 open source projects at this point. And the kind of inspiration was that, a lot of people are focused on LLMs for generating code, but as an open source maintainer and also just as an engineer, I felt like most of my time wasn't spent coding, but more on like maintenance tasks that required an understanding of code and code changes in particular, and then applying those to answer questions, triage issues, update documentation, all these tasks that typically fall on a maintainer's plate. And so the way we kind of open source communities can use DOSU, I'll show like an example of what it looks like in the end state, and then like kind of backtrack into the app to see what the actual setup can actually look like. And feel free to interrupt with questions as I go through. So just jumping into an example of like what DOSU could look like. When it's set up, here is an issue from Apache Superset yesterday, where classic GitHub issue, someone's running into some errors and they aren't able to figure out what's going on. Here you see DOSU commenting. So I want to call out, and I'll show this in the settings, but like DOSU can be configured to meet community's needs. In this case, Superset wants DOSU to reply to contributors automatically if it has an answer, but that's configurable. So you'll see here, it introduces itself to new users. It's able to search across GitHub issues and discussions to find like related issues and discussions, and then actually posting a solution from those, as well as citing code sources and in this case some upgrading instructions as well. So it's actually a good example of all the data sources that DOSU uses. So issues, discussions, and then actual documentation plus code, similar to what a maintainer would do. And then DOSU also helps with auto labeling. And I think I looked at the Podman repos. I think this could be relevant to you all. It's like one of the easiest ways to start with DOSU is with auto labeling. It's very, very good at it. And it's quite helpful. Yeah, and then so in this case, this was able to point the user in the right direction. Any questions on this? Otherwise, I'll hop into another example and then go into the app itself.
Hearing nothing, I think you're good to go.
Cool. Sweet. So here's another example. I really like this example. It's from KubeVirt, where a user was basically looking for something in the documentation but couldn't find it. And in this case, DOSU responds based off the code itself because it didn't exist in the documentation, but was actually able to successfully resolve and answer the user's question. And then again here, auto labeling, but then users and the action item out of this was to update the documentation. And so that's long term where we're going with DOSU is really using this as a tool to not only answer questions, but figure out where are the gaps in your documentation and then help you kind of generate and maintain knowledge over time. So can we help you update docs and then try to keep those documentation docs in sync as well. Cool. So then kind of like, what does this look like on the application side? So if you jump into the app, here I have the same project open. We have this notion of a workspace. This is like kind of where DOSU is deployed. So if we go into it, you can see all the settings available to maintainers. You have, you can give information to DOSU. So, just high level name, description, any additional context that might be helpful. Right now we have the notion of a default maintainer. So, if DOSU can't figure something out and the user still needs help, who should it ping? And we want to do more intelligent routing in the future. You can connect a workspace, so get a repo to data sources. So it could be the GitHub repository itself. It could be other GitHub repositories that you depend on, or documentation, logs, user guide, community notes, those sorts of things. And then you have configuration on an issue, pull request, and discussion level. So you have auto labeling. You get to select which issues you want DOSU to manage. It typically is best on like non-workflow labels, so like kind labels um, are very common. And then you can have the option to focus on do deprecation. So if there's like very similar threads or issues discussions, DOSU will comment on them automatically. And then here's you have configuration on the auto reply setting. So one thing I want to show, because this is typically like a very popular feature with maintainers, is so if you disable auto reply, you actually enable a feature we call previews. This is going to become a bit clearer. It's a bit confusing in the UX now, but very, very soon, hopefully like next week, it'll be a lot clearer. But basically what this does is allows you to preview what DOSU would have responded, and then edit the message and give feedback. And if you like it, you can publish it directly to GitHub. But if you don't, you can discard it. So it's a way to like try out DOSU, give feedback, watch it improve before kind of enabling auto reply or having like minimal community impact. We'll just revert back to them. And then we have like other things that we've kind of borrowed from other open source projects, bots. So StaleBot, encourage issue voting. On the pull request side, we have looks good to me and side labels, which are borrowed from Wrapup, just much easier to implement. We also have separate auto labeling for pull requests, and then discussions aren't enabled here, but they look very similar to issues in terms of reply settings. And then, so I guess any questions on the settings before I'm going to show that preview feature I mentioned quickly. All right.
I think you're good.
Cool. So in that case, we'll go over to Airflow. So here, we've been working with the Airflow team maintainers. We're really excited about this feature. So where they have I don't know how many people on their triage team, but let's say a dozen. And what the workflow that we're working on them with is like using DOSU as almost like a research assistant or like kind of accelerating their issue triage process. So where we're going is we're gonna have like this instead of a threads view, like an activity feed of like, okay, here are the new issues that came in, and here are DOSU's responses and information about them. So DOSU automatically kind of showing you related code, PRs, issues, etc. And then you get to decide, like looking at this preview as a maintainer, like, okay, is this the right answer? If not, you can directly edit it and then publish it from here. So it's kind of a human in the loop, kind of hopefully making it faster to go through all of your open issues every week, depending on what your triage workflow looks like. So we're pushing very hard on this as well. Cool. And just to be clear, like this is a preview so that if I go to the actual GitHub issue, you will not see DOSU here. So just like a way to preview what it would have responded. Cool. So I guess all I had to share. Like I said, in terms of trying out DOSU, we've partnered with the CNCF to make DOSU kind of like broadly available to all CNCF projects. So feel free to try it out. I can share docs as well, links to that, but love feedback. We're just trying to make this tool very useful to maintainers. So thanks.
Okay, great demo, and thank you. Definitely something we can think about. Yeah, I'll bring it up in maintainer meetings. Okay. So next up, we have a demo from Mario about a few things that he's been working on recently, specifically Podman on Windows things. Mario, are you able to share your screen?
Yeah, thank you, Matt. Let me try to share. Okay, so you should be able to see the screen. All right. Yeah, so I'm going to demo a few things, new things on Windows, and then a final one that is related to kubeplay, the Podman kubeplay command. Also, so things that have landed on main branch last sprint, so in the last month. So not everything is already released in the latest release. But so let's start with the first feature. So the first feature is a change on the installer welcome page. This is something that we've been working on for a few months. It was about letting the user select Hyper-V also, not only WSL. That has been possible today because we have upgraded to the latest version of the Wix toolkit for building the installers. And that allowed us to add a checkbox. So I will demo that. So here are three installers. This one is the old one, the first one. So as you see, the old one only allow you to decide if you wanted to install WSL as a Windows component or not, and then it actually only allowed to configure Podman with WSL. So let's cancel that. And so the latest release now, if you run the installer, you have a radio button here that actually allows you to select Hyper-V or WSL. So you can decide also if you want to install the component or not as before, but now you can select the virtualization subsystem that you want to install. So let's run it, because that's the first change. So and the second one is that now if you try to run the installer second time with a newer version, you actually aren't prompted about installing WSL or Hyper-V. It's actually it assumes that since that's the second installation, you don't want to change configuration, you don't want to reinstall components, so it figures it out and doesn't prompt anything to the user. That's the scenario if Podman is already locally installed. All right, so that's the first thing I wanted to show. So the installer. The second one is about how the image for the WSL VMs machines is actually distributed. So I'm gonna open a shell here. Okay. So if we do a Podman, let me do a Podman. Yeah, my Podman machine. It's using the old Podman client, so old version. If I do like an init, what it's going to do is going to download a compressed file from somewhere we don't see exactly, but we see that that's a tar file that is then being extracted, etc. And this is actually it was downloaded directly from the latest release on the GitHub release page. So it's actually downloading the Windows file. So the 5.31 here. This is the file that gets downloaded, and this is how it worked before. But for all the other provider on Mac and on Windows today, we are actually getting the image as an OCI artifact from Quay.io. So that's what we wanted to change. So now I'm going to remove the VM that I just created, and I'm going to actually repeat the same thing with using the new binary of Podman. So let's do init. Okay, and you can see that it's actually pulling from Quay.io. So it's getting it from Quay.io. So it's downloading it, and then it's actually the process is the same, and it's consistent with other providers. So we wanted to make it more consistent. So if we go back here, this is actually the Podman organization on Quay.io, and these are actually the WSL images that has been started to be published a few weeks ago. And yeah, the latest version of Podman in main branch is actually pulling from here the images. Okay, so now I'm going to start it, because the next thing I wanted to actually show is another issue that has been fixed still on WSL on Windows, and that's this issue here. So Podman build doesn't handle the volume path correctly. So if you try to do a Podman build, you got an error. Let's try to reproduce that. Okay. So here I'm going to do a Podman build, and I'm going to actually specify a volume, and as a volume I'm specifying the current directory /volume /volume, so the folder volume under the current directory, and I want to mount it in /volume. So if I try to run it with the old Podman, this is what I get. So invalid auth path. So it sees like C something, because C it's the beginning of the path, and it considers that's not a valid path. And so what we have done is that now the new Podman is actually translating the Windows path into a valid path inside the Podman machine. So if we run that with the new one, you can see that the build is actually run successfully. So there is no, so the volume is found in actually the Docker file that is used. Yeah, it uses a file from the volume, so you can see that it's used, and it's actually able to execute the cat volume hello. So it's showing the content of the file that it's inside the volume. Okay, so that was this one, and the last thing I wanted to show was about an improvement on the kubeplay command. So on Kubernetes side, we have there has been so there is a new feature that has been introduced as an alpha on the 1.31 version of Kubernetes, and that's about being able to use an OCI artifact as an image. So what does that mean? That I'm going to show a YAML file. Should be here. Yeah, pod. Okay. All right. So this is an example of a definition, a specification of a pod on Kubernetes. And the particular thing here is that the volume that is defined here as a reference to a container image. So this is something really fresh. So introduced as alpha in Kubernetes. It works on version 1.31 if the alpha feature is enabled only. And on Podman side, we wanted to provide the support for that kind of volume, because if you use like a current Podman and you try to do kube play, it actually tells you that so it fails to create the volume because only those kind of volume are supported. So if so now if I'm going to connect to another machine where I have the latest version of Podman that supports that, and if I run the same, so I have the same file here, and if I try to do a Podman kube play of this Podman here, it actually works and is able actually to mount the image on the pod, and I should be able to do Podman PS and actually exec. I can get into the pod container, and if I look at volume, I can see that the /volume folder has been mounted, and there is the content of the image that is actually here. The cool thing of this feature is that if the image in the YAML, so like the image that is actually referenced here is not pre-pooled, the command will actually, the kube play will actually be first pre-pool the image, so that when the volume is created, actually the image is already there and it's possible to mount it on the container. All right, so that was my last demo. So I guess that's it. So I don't know if there is any question, I'm happy to answer. Otherwise, yeah, let's move forward.
Yeah, I have a quick question. I haven't
sure.
played with the OCI artifacts yet, but I worked on something that accelerates, allows you to mount container images directly from distributed file systems without downloading the blob. I assume that will just work with OCI images, like for example, with things like additional layer storage be used with that.
It works with, so whatever works with currently locally. So I mean, not with Podman kube play. So because today you can do like Podman run -v, and you can specify an OCI artifact. Whatever currently works with that should work with.
Okay, so it uses the same podlib approach to.
It uses the same
div files.
It uses the same code. Actually, it reuses the same package.
Awesome.
Okay, so I don't think there are other questions. So Matt, I give it back to you.
Okay, thank you, Mario. That was a great demo. Okay, that is our two things that we had on the agenda. We had a third, but Sally isn't able to make it today. So I will move on and ask, does anyone have any questions about the project in general, anything we've seen here, or just any questions that you'd like answered? All right, not hearing anything. Last call on that. Otherwise, I will stop the recording. Okay. It has been a great community meeting. Thank you to everyone who presented. And it is great seeing everyone. Our next community meeting will be, I believe, in November. Or is it December? I am not Tom. I am very sorry. Tom would have had these dates for you, but it will be posted on the Podman.io Twitter. And yeah. It should also be in the agenda doc for the meeting, which should have been attached to the invite. Thank you, everyone who presented. And I am going to stop the recording.